In a desperate scramble to deflect attention from the candidate whose post-conviction behavior has varied from forgetful to vengeful to downright frightening, MAGA Republicans, in conjunction with the Wall Street Journal, have once again raised an issue that's almost as old as both candidates. In a recent article, the Journal reported Biden's behavior in a congressional meeting was questionable. But the people cited in the article were Kevin McCarthy and Mike Johnson, both minions for the former president and convicted felon Donald Trump. While that article has been the fodder for much coverage on all sides of the Rubik's Cube of political commentary, the first video you're about to see comes from Morning Joe on MSNBC. It breaks down not only the accuracy of the Wall Street Journal's article, but also the motivations behind it. And we'll see they take great detail in considering the source of yet another premeditated and inaccurate volley over the bow of Joe Biden's leadership. You know, it's become an all-out effort to subvert, distract, and continue to misinform the American public by the fringiest of fringes, the MAGA glasshouse Republicans and their kind. Thankfully, the folks at MSNBC took careful aim at some of those glasshouse Republicans and the stones they endlessly throw. And one might argue the biggest stone thrower of all is a guy who seems to have no leadership stones of his own where it counts. Of course, that would be Trump puppet or, as some might suggest, Trump's ventriloquist dummy, former Speaker of the House, until he was driven out, Kevin McCarthy. Unlike another famous McCarthy that was also a ventriloquist dummy, this puppet can actually speak out of both sides of his mouth. Let's have a look at not just Morning Joe's unique take on this illusion of news, but also both CNN and Fox's assessment of this hatchet job of a story, which they all seem to agree are just empty words coming out of soulless mouths. Let's have a look.
Well, number one, that Wall Street Journal article was a sham. There's not a single criticism on the record by a Democrat. It's all Republicans. It's a partisan hit piece, and they should be embarrassed about it. Joe Biden is 4 years older than Donald Trump. They would go to high school together, like at the same age distance. The American people will make this decision for themselves.
His demeanor and command of the details seemed to shift from one day to the next, according to then House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
By the way, they also quoted Mike Johnson, people around Mike Johnson, and admit that this was basically House Republicans whacking.
Why didn't they just ask Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Well, exactly.
Why did?
They could have.
And Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, it's really shocking, especially when you see what Kevin McCarthy has said repeatedly, publicly, and behind the scenes about Biden on those same days when they were negotiating.
The strong feelings you're seeing about this article comes also because the context of this race and these two candidates, it's interesting. That's all I'll say. Anyhow, that flies in the face of what McCarthy said about Biden's effectiveness in the past. From Politico last year, quote, McCarthy mocked Biden's age and mental acuity in public.
In public, like he did in this article.
While privately telling allies that he found the president sharp and substantive in their conversations, a contradiction that left a deep impression on the White House. This from the New York Times. Privately, Mr. McCarthy has told allies that he has found Mr. Biden to be mentally sharp in meetings. And this from The Hill. Very professional, very smart, very tough at the same time. McCarthy told reporters at the Capitol of his talks with Biden.
But what I find so shocking about this article is they go to Kevin McCarthy as their main source and other House Republicans, the same House Republicans, Mike Johnson, who just lied through his teeth repeatedly, Mike Johnson, who got to power based on the big lie, and they're using people around Johnson and Kevin McCarthy to do this Trump hit piece on Joe Biden.
So we heard from administration officials that McCarthy did say that the president was sharp in meetings. Our reporting also suggested that McCarthy was doing that tactically because he had to get along with President Biden at a time when the country was at really risk of a debt default if there was not some type of a deal. So you can take that for what it's worth. You can decide McCarthy is not credible or that he is, but that's what our reporting showed.
From Anthony Hopkins' Torment in the horror movie classic Magic to the classic Twilight Zone episode, The Dummy, ventriloquial figures are often archetypes of evil. And rightfully so. These bloodless beings are the very stuff of sheer madness. But unlike, say, Charlie McCarthy, You can't put these dummies away at the end of their performance, and you can't shut them up, because their strings are being pulled by a master showman in what has deteriorated the political process into a two-bit carnival. And for all of us, the price of admission is steep, and if this carnival doesn't get run out of town soon, you'll never get your money back. But you might get a giant stuffed orange orangutan to take home to the kids. Oh, and apologies to Edgar Bergen.